Going on YouTube, ladies and gentlemen? It's been a while since last I saw you, but well, I said I was going to do some more videos, so here we go. Today I'm going to go over my reloading process and some of the tools that I use. And certainly I'm not indicating that this is the end-all be-all. I mean, everybody's got their own process. But if this helps people, then by all means, I don't see what the harm is. Well, these cases have already been cleaned. And a lot of times I'll use walnut media to do that. And I do like to use the wet tumbler to get the debris that's left over from that media out of the shells. That way it doesn't dirty up in here, it doesn't cause damage inside the shell, things of that nature. So what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be sizing. And I'm using the Redding Premium Die Set. And I highly recommend these. These are coming out pretty consistent as far as measurements go. And I think I'll put a link in the description so that you guys can find them on Amazon. You might even be able to find them a little cheaper on Amazon than you would at Redding. So to size this, I'm going to back this off just a little bit. And I'm going to run it through nice and easy. You shouldn't have to force this. If you do have to force this, a couple of things could be happening. You could be hydraulically venting, which means you have a little bit too much grease, or this is down too far. And if you noticed earlier, I backed this out. I'm going to tell you why. So now that it's sized, what I want to do is I want to achieve my shoulder bump. And what the shoulder bump is moving this part of the shell back, your shoulder right here. You're going to move that back. And I'm aiming for anywhere from 15 thousandths to 2 thousandths of an inch. I'm sorry, 15 hundredths of an inch to 2 thousandths of an inch. The reason I do that, and it's pretty common practice, is because when you fire, this shoulder will expand. So you want to put it back just a little bit, because now that it's fire formed to your chamber, after the first time you fire a shell, it's going to fire form inside your chamber. So this is going to want to essentially be the same size as the area that it's supposed to fit in. And that's what causes a little bit more tension in your lever action. And sometimes, like in an automatic, it won't even chamber or chamber correctly. You won't have your action all the way closed and it won't fire. So I'm going to bump that back just a little bit. Since it's fire formed, you don't need to do much. You just need to get it to the point where it's not touching all the way around inside that chamber. And how I do that is I back this out. And once I have my ram up and the bullet sized, I'll get it down to where it's just touching. Right there. And you don't want to force this. You don't want to crank this down. Just get it to where it stops. Give yourself another little bump. And then you're going to measure it with a head spacer. So I'm going to grab my head spacer. I'm going to show you how to do that real quick. Okay, so we have the head spacer set up. And these units, and there's a few of these different sizes and different numbers will indicate on a chart that you can download from Hornady which caliber, which brass will fit in it. And the idea here is to take a measurement beforehand and take a measurement afterwards. You give it a little twist, you can see that it'll kind of level it out. Once you can get a few twists and no numbers are changing, that's a pretty good indication that you're good. So before you get to that point, what I like to do is I like to zero. I'll take a previous measurement and then I'll take an after measurement. Give it a couple of twists. That's actually the number that I look for this caliber. So this worked out pretty well, actually. I mean, I didn't do my previous, but this is the number that I actually look for when I'm bumping my 6.5 PRC. Again, take a measurement beforehand, take a measurement afterhand, and you want to see a 1500ths to a 2000ths difference. Or at least that's what my preference is. Now, after I have sized these up, that's when I'm going to trim them. And the reason I wait until after I do the sizing for the shell and for the throat is because if you trim this beforehand and then size it, you will expand this brass. And now your trimming size is no longer any good. Okay, very simple concept here. Again, you're going to want to zero your micrometer. I like to take a previous measurement just so I know how much I'm chewing off. Determine the size that you want trimmed. That's kind of a tricky process, but there are a couple of easy methods you can use that are fairly accurate. And this is a simple trimmer. I have another trimmer out in my garage that actually does essentially the next 3 steps for me in one quick bzzz. But I don't want to get that involved. Number one, that trimmer was quite expensive, and this is kind of the part that I want people to see. So we saw earlier our measurement. And bear in mind, these are not correct measurements for these loads. This is simply an example to show you my method once again. 20175. And let's say this is after being shot. So this, let's assume this is already expanded. And I want it to go to 2.173. It doesn't take much with these cutters. These cutters are sharp and they last a long time. Get a couple spins. And as you can see, it took a lot off. It does not take much. And the reason this took so much off is because, number one, I don't have this set. I backed these off in order to do this example. But you can loosen these with an Allen key, move them back and forth, and you can kind of set them to the length that you want. So assume this was the length that you want. The shell is the exact length that you want. You put that in, you loosen these up, slide them toward your ram, and then tighten them back down. And then as you're spinning, you'll hear it get quiet, like it's not chewing anymore. And that's a pretty good indication that you've bottomed out. And then you measure. And if you like your measurement, then you go on to the next step. And that is getting rid of that nasty flat spot right there and whatever burrs may be on the inside. And you want to clean that out simply so that it doesn't damage your bullet or stop it prematurely or put a little bit too much pressure between your neck and your bullet that could affect your velocity later on down the road. Again, I have another unit that actually, it will do these 2 steps for me. Maybe not this one, but it'll do these 2 steps for me. This, as it rotates, will chew up on the outside and smooth that out a little bit. This one will chew up on the inside, smooth that out a little bit. These serve a couple of purposes. Number one, when you put a burr on the outside of this, that'll make chambering a little bit easier. And when you clean up on the inside, that will make seating your bullet a little more consistent, a little more accuracy, or a little more consistent, and a little more accurate. And as any long-range shooter knows, consistency equals accuracy. So you don't want the inside of that to be chewed up at all. And this is going to be a little loud, but bear with me. Maybe later on in editing, I'll try and quiet it down, but let's see what happens. Something I like to do is make sure to spin it in there. And what that does in my mind is it makes sure that it's getting all the way around in all areas of that bullet. Hopefully. And I don't know if my camera is quite powerful enough to show you the berm on that, but I can feel it. I can feel that it's not sharp and ragged anymore. And again, the same thing. I like to spin the shell as it's cooking, or as it's cutting. And that way I know that it's getting as consistent of a cut on the inside as possible. It looks like it could be a little bit cleaner than that. Let's give it another couple spins. And you don't need to put much pressure on this. As a matter of fact, I don't really put a whole lot of pressure on it at all. I just kind of let it set on there and do its thing. That looks a little better. Now I know my camera's not picking it up because I'm not quite a millionaire yet, but you know, I can see that it's a little cleaner on the outside. Yeah, you can't really see that burr in the camera. But it did in fact achieve the goal that I wanted. There's a little burr right there. Let's get rid of that. Yeah, I can feel it hitting that burr. Okay, yeah, it feels like it's gone now. Feels pretty smooth. And all that was to clean the throat. Again, the better the bullet seats, the better your shot's going to be. If you have debris, especially another kind of metal in there, it's not going to turn out well. That will affect your accuracy. It'll hit your velocity and essentially change your ballistics. Like, let's say you have a dope card set up for that caliber, and now you're not hitting the velocities that you want to, or even close to those velocities. You know, close range, you know, 200, 300, 400 yards, it's not going to make a difference. But once you get out in range, you know, 600, 700, 800 yards, 1,000, beyond, that little bit of difference in velocity can mean the difference between, you know, missing by, you know, a few inches, or a 7-inch group, or an 8-inch group, or a 10-inch group. You know, battling factors like different humidity levels from the place you shot to the place you're going, or wind differentials from where you're shooting to where you're shooting at. Those are the kind of things that should affect your ammunition, and things that you should be able to read as a shooter. Things that should not affect your ammunition in flight, you know, are things like different velocities, different tensions on your neck. Right here. And there are a lot of things that can factor that. A lot of things. And I, to be 100% honest, don't have time to go over all of them in this video. But maybe in the future I can go over stuff like that. But, you know, the tension on your neck even has a part to play. So when you have debris in there and that bullet's trying to punch through all that, it's going to affect your accuracy in the long run. This is an auto loader. And I like this bad boy. I mean, there's a lot better ones out there that just, you know, a little flick of the thumb will do the trick. But I like this one because I can visually see that primer. And there are some of them that sit off to the side here to where you can't really see and you just got to kind of go on blind luck. And I'm not bashing those products by any means. They're all fine products. They all do their job. But sometimes things fail. Every once in a while, this won't pick up a primer. But I can see that. So that's why I use this one. And this is just an RCBS product. You know, and this is RCBS Rock Chuck 4. These are all fine products. I mean, you don't have to spend thousands of dollars on this equipment in order to get this done. Using this product in particular, you pull your handle back and it'll collect a primer. All you gotta do, lift up, push in, prime, good to go. One practice that I do, and I highly recommend, is lay it down on a flat surface. And if it wobbles like that, you're probably not seated correctly, which is an easy fix. You just go back in, give her a little extra bump, and voila. Okay, now it's time for some powder. And that, in my opinion, this works pretty good. It's pretty accurate. I've compared it a few times to a balance scale, and it's come out pretty good. Pretty consistent. I'm going to go ahead and show you this, so I apologize if things are a little ski-wampus for a minute. This one's pretty easy. Power it on. You let it count down. And now all you have to do is enter in the amount. In this case, I want 59.3 grain. If I could learn how to use the keypad, that'd probably be a little more helpful to you guys. And then all you have to do is press go. And it will trickle for you. That is an indication that that was your first load. And you see how it went a little bit over? This is an easy fix. I mean, lick your finger a little bit, pull some out. And then if you have a trickler, you fill up the trickler as well, and you can just give it a little tiny bit at a time. More often than not, when you take that little bit out, this will correct it. And it did. Okay, now that we have our charge put out, now it's time for our seating. That's what this bad boy is for. And I can tell you from personal experience, this thing is accurate. And I'll show you that. The reason I put that ram back up is so that I can feel the bottom of this die touch that shell holder. When it does, I'll give it the slightest little turn back. Okay, so there it hit, so I'll just give it just a little turn back. And then I'll tighten all this down so that it doesn't move around. And from here, I'm going to be using this to adjust my bullet depths. Okay, now that we got our powder, primer, we're trimmed, we got the berm, we got the inside cleaned up real good, and we got the neck cleaned up real good. Now it's time for the bullet. And again, the process that I like to use is as soon as I dump the powder into a shell, I like to move it to the next one coming up, and then take that shell that I just put the powder in and put the bullet in. It just helps me keep track of things. So earlier I was talking about backing these off. And the reason for that is if you put this down too far, or you have this down too far, you'll run into a situation like this where it starts to crush your shell. Now this one was done intentionally, and it was to show you the kind of things that you need to look for. And depending on the severity of how far off you are, will depend on how severe that bump is. And not only will that widen this throat, but it'll also essentially make it impossible for you to chamber this round. I've already done that on this one, and this is already set up for loads on this one. I adjusted it a little bit just to show you the concept of this right here. I mean, I'm sure most of you know, if you're looking at reloading, you probably know how to use these. But there may be some of you that don't, and might not even know about this product in particular. This is a Redding premium die set. And this micrometer is the reason I like it. And this is the first time I've used one of these, and it has completely changed the way I reload. Because before, unlike an RCBS, it just has the screw that comes out with the lock ring. I would adjust that lock ring. And then I'd move this. Well, with this, I know exactly what I'm doing with these numbers. Now, this is about the only reloading process time where you're going to expect tension, because it is pushing that bullet down into that throat. So expect tension on this one, but not too much. I mean, if you have to really crank on that bad boy, you're doing something wrong. So these measurements are off. That is not the actual size that I want them to be, but I want to show you something. So you can see here 3.046. Let's say I wanted that to come down a thousandths. So you adjust 1/1000th. You get pretty damn close. And from there, you can get that down to 3.0345, whatever, just by going in smaller increments. So I really like this product, because it gives you an idea of the adjustment that you're making, and you can set it. This one is typically set this round at 2972. So I'll have that bad boy right around there somewhere, and with just a little bit of turn, just back off just a little bit, and then you seat your bullet, you take your measurements, and you can understand based on the number and its correlation with the decimal point. So you have your 10, hundredths, thousandths, so forth and so on. So if you need to come down a thousandths, why then you just use these smaller hashes. And if you need it to come down more, you can use the 0.5 or the 1. It makes a difference. But again, as I recommend, back it off a little bit from what it should be. That way you don't go past what you want to go. I mean, you can really, really fine tune this thing with that thousandths point, with your 0.5 and your 1/1000ths. So anyway, what do you say we go over it one more time, just for the sake of good practice? Size your throat. Full length sizing die is what I like to use. And don't forget to get your bump. And remember, once you get this all set up to where the bottom of this die is touching the top of your shell holder, well, then you can just back this off a little bit. And once you get your shell in there, then wind this down until it's touching the shell. Give it another little bump. Check your bump with the head spacer that I showed you earlier. If it's not where you want it, give it another little tiny twist. Try it again, rinse and repeat. And as I said earlier, I like to trim after I've sized, because if you trim and then size, well, your trim length isn't going to be the same, because when you size that shell, you're going to be essentially expanding and stretching that brass. So be sure to trim after, or at least that's how I do it. Keep everything nice and clean, the outside and the inside. Again, this is the outside. It cleans up the burr real good, and that's the inside. And that's so that you don't want it damaging your bullet. Get you a primer in there, this little unit here, or whatever unit you use. Some powder, and some bullets. Now, for just a second, I want to stress just a little bit about the importance of these measurements. The more accurate that your measurements are, the more consistent your bullet is going to perform. The better it fits in your chamber, the better it's going to perform. And if every measurement that you make on every aspect of your reloading process is as consistent as possible, even if you got to play around with it to see if your rifle will perform a little bit better, if your bullet is seated a little deeper, or seated a little more shallow, or seated with a little less pressure, or if your shell needs to be a little longer or shorter, feel free to do it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with abandoning a round. The ones that I'm loading right now are the ELDX. And these perform best in my rifle. They might not perform well at all in yours. I mean, you might need to go with Berger or, Nosler or Federal, something like that. But mess around with your measurements before you completely abandon a round. And well, anyway, that's all I got. I might do another video on how I clean them and, process them before I get to this point later on down the road. So we'll see what happens in that area. In the meantime, a like and a comment certainly wouldn't hurt. And if you have time, subscribe. And I will certainly talk to you later. Have a good one. Thanks for watching the video.